One of the things that Wayne said took him quite a bit of time was working in this area here. So what I did is I removed the air box. I didn't even know there's a PCV valve here. I'll have to figure that out later. Not too worried about it. But so I removed the air box out, and what a better time to do this when I have no fenders in the way. I can step right inside. Pretty easy to get to. I don't even have to roll out the over-the-top creeper. So I figured this is going to be the perfect time, even though I haven't done anything else to the truck yet. We'll get started on making the mixer box here. So just like you guys have seen me do in my other videos, this thin cardboard, this works awesome for doing templates. So here's the back side of the air box that actually bolts down onto the throttle body. Now it's got this raised lip all the way around. Now because it's not steel, we can't hammer form and cut a template out. But, let's see, adjust the camera. What we can do is take that thin cardboard, lay it on there, just like before. And we're just gonna go around and we're gonna tap on that raised lip. And you'll see that leaves this very faint line all the way around. And because this gasket surface has a wide edge, this raised lip actually has a spot where it sits into the gasket on the throttle body. But this is also a sealing surface on both sides of that lip as well. So I just went around, hammer formed it, trimmed it a little bit big. Now I'm going to flip it over, use a transfer punch, punch the holes out. Once the holes are punched, I can set some bolts in there, hold this in place, trace out from the inside where the throttle flaps are, and you can cut those out, or what I may end up doing is just leaving this whole oval completely open, because there's really no point in separating them out, I don't think, because they're free flowing through the middle anyways, and for wood gas it's gonna flow through there no problem. So now I got the template laid underneath, got our transfer punch. Try to move it as little as possible. Oh, doesn't fit through that one. Move down one size real quick. This one must have got munched or something. So, just like that, we have our bolt pattern. So those can get punched out. If you got a hole punch, that's an easy way to do it. But for what I'm doing here, all I need is the center punch mark. When I build this plate, it'll get drilled right through those. So now I'm gonna go through and trace out the butterflies. So I got it held in place. You can see all of our bolt holes are centered up where we want them. Just go through and these don't have to be perfect, because it's not gonna get cut to exact. There's really no reason for it to be cut exact. I know that I have to step it over anyways just because the offset that the pen gives it, but that gives me the point where I can cut out and probably take 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So minus trimming, there's our complete template for the throttle body to make our mixer box sit on. Took a piece of 3/16 plate, transferred our template onto it, made it line up real nice, traced it out with a machinist scribe, bandsawed it out, got my rough shape. I went around the edges with a flap wheel, smoothed it off, transferred our center punch holes. Now we're going to throw it in the drill press and make our bolt pattern. And there we go, there's our flange. Now we can go ahead and take our template, cut out the holes, trace the holes on here, blow those out, and that'll be the base plate. Goes right on to the base of the mixer box that we're making. So if you'll remember, I said where I trace these out is actually smaller than the opening. So I'm going to take a pair of calipers real quick and just measure the actual diameter, which appears to be about 52 millimeter. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to center my calipers up just on either side of where our traced out line is. I'm just going to give that a reference. Just like so. I'm going to do it on both. Because this doesn't have to be exact at all. Because all we're looking for is the gas to be able to flow through there. So I'm going to take just any old straight edge. Of course, that marker's about junk. And I'm just going to trace right through those marks. So now what I can do is I'll take this gap here on both sides. I'm going to keep that same measurement up and around both sides, and that will be the actual oval shape that we end up cutting out. So now you can see the basis of the oval that will actually cut out of this, transfer onto our plate, and then cut out of the plate. So I went ahead, took my X-Acto knife, trimmed that out, trimmed that window. We're just going to lay it on, make sure our bolt pattern matches up still, and give that a trace. You don't have to use a machinist scribe, it's just what I prefer. You can use soapstone to be just fine for this. Even a permanent marker, as long as you can see it on your base material so you know where you need to cut. And I go around it a few times, make sure my scribe gets a good bite and I can see it real well. There you go. Now an easy way to cut this out, if I had it, is a hole saw that matches this radius, and punch 2 holes and then take a zip disc and cut them across, and then your oval's done. I don't have the correct size, so I believe I'll just use the plasma cutter to do this. See how we're looking here. Come on, get on. The bolt pattern's just a little bit tight. So it sits all the way on there. The valves are completely unobstructed. One thing we have to figure out is this uses studs that hold the throttle bodies on, and these nuts stick past this gasket surface a bit. So I might just take a chunk of rubber or something that I can put in here and use as a thicker gasket. Wayne used longer bolts, which I could do, but then I'd have to go buy them, and I'm cheap, so I'll find a way to make this work. So here we got our flange. We got all of the mill scale ground off, nice and flat. Here I have a piece of 5-inch exhaust pipe that I have painstakingly used a rubber mallet and a ball peen hammer and the vise and oblonged it out. And it will sit just like so. That will give me all the access I need to take the nuts that are going to mount this plate There'll be room for all the nuts all the way around. I just have to figure out that spacer for back here, which I think I might use a chunk of mud flap if I have one that's thick enough. So the pipe will get welded down to the flange, and then I'm going to have to create a bolt-on cap right here. That way when I go to install this, I can just slide my hand up inside, bolt it down. Once my hand's out of the way, bolt the end cap down, and then we'll start working on where our air and gas lines are going to come onto it. Oh, and if I didn't mention before, I did follow Wayne's lead. This pipe is 5 3/4 inches long. So I'm going to tack weld it down, take it out to the truck, make sure everything's going to fit up and I can get to all the bolts exactly how I want it, and we'll burn it in. Okay, ready for the first test fit. We'll walk out to the truck. Fit up really nicely, so got her all dialed in, welded up. I gotta admit, those are some pretty good looking welds. Don Mans is gonna say something about welding with butter, but got the machine dialed in real nice. That's nice and sealed up. I made sure I cleaned all my surfaces real good. I know I burned in just by looking at the colors. It ain't going nowhere. So we'll wait for that to cool off, get it back inside of the truck, and figure out where our pipes are going to go onto it. Had a little bit of trouble there with the bandsaw, but you can see the shape I got to work with here. And what I'm intending to do, the reason I cut out this cardboard template, I needed an inside diameter. Now I can't just take this other piece of 5" and cut a diameter out of it, because I had to oblong the back of this hole. The front face of this pipe is just a little bit oblong, so I needed an exact. That's why I cut that one. That'll come into play in a minute here. So here's the shape that I have worked out. It's actually going to go about like so. And I have on the sides right here maybe 3/16 of an inch overlap out. Up here on the sides I have maybe 5/16 hanging out. And this is going to mount one of the gas spouts, but it's also going to be a built-in puffer lid, because with wood gas generally you want some form of pressure relief if you get a oxygen mixture that combusts where you don't want it to. And this is one of the areas that I would prefer it not, or anywhere in the front end of the plumbing. If this is the give point, then we'll be good. And what I'm intending to do is set up 2 rods that run back down onto the main mixer body, and those will be on springs. So if ever there's pressure, this will boop and set back down. I'll have to create a gasket surface underneath. I have an idea of how I'm going to do that. I haven't completely worked it out, but you know, it's a fabricate as you go type thing. So I got this roughed out. I'm going to clean up these edges and figure out how I'm going to mount them up. Still a little hot. So if this is going to be a puffer lid, I need for it to be able to lift up but also set back down in place. Now I do have a center hole here. This was just a piece of scrap metal that happened to have that hole. I was cutting plates for something else using my protractor, so it was already there. I'm not too concerned about it. It'll get plugged up. If you wanted to, you could run a center stud just like a carburetor and have a little web inside with a nut in it, so that you would just basically put a wing nut down. But then this wouldn't be able to act as a puffer lid very well. You could put a spring underneath of it and make it into a puffer lid, but that would inhibit your hand being able to go in to get the bolts down into the bottom. So I needed to be able to get freely into it but I also needed this to act as a puffer lid. So as you guys see, I left these tabs right here. These are going to have some studs or bolts or something. I haven't figured out how I'm doing that yet, with a set of springs so this can puff up and down. Well, if it's going to puff up, there's a good chance that it's going to move. Well, we need to be able to prevent it from moving so far out of place that it won't slide back into place and make a tight seal. Because if the lid moves over and it loses the seal, then your air mixture gets all screwy. It's all for naught. So what I did, I took this other piece of 5-inch pipe. I took 1.25 inch rip off of the outside edge. Took that rip, bent it to where it is the same oval shape, and then shrunk it up so it fits inside of this diameter. That way, when this lid goes into its puffing action, it's going to slide up. The bolts and springs will retain it from traveling too far, and this lip will prevent it from coming out of alignment with its gasket surface. Well, that would only work so well because if it can't come past that lip, how's it gonna vent? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go around this lip now, I'm gonna punch holes all the way through it. So this lid's only gonna have to move 1/2 inch, and it'll be able to vent all the gases out the sides, and the lid will drop right back down in place. Now, I gotta fiddle with it to get it back in place because it's not perfect. But it has a free spot right here where it moves. You're gonna hold this in place nice and easily. So that's where my rods will be to hold it in place. Once it's held in place, there's nothing that can prevent it from turning too far, getting bound up and not wanting to open. It'll be right in that free spot where it slides open. So you'll see how that's going to work here in a minute once I get all the baffle holes cut into it, and then how I design the rods and springs. The scrap pile provides. All right, let's do a quick assembly and dry run. So we've got a 3/8 nut. We have a 1/4-20 bolt, smooth shaft at the top. So that guy slides in all the way up to the shank and moves pretty freely, but there's a little bit of play. Okay. Now our homemade spring from our e-brake cover spring, cut down to size the way we want it. Slide that guy on. The nut is going to bottom out the spring and keep it in place. Washer. Nylock nut just down until it touches the nylon. So if this is mounted down here on the barrel somewhere, and this is mounted inside of the puffer lid that you can't see because it's right there, and it would be about meow. If it was mounted there and there was a puff, this would go boink and open up, let it breathe, and snap back closed. Very little pressure when it's just in the resting position, but when it gets out here, there's plenty of, I mean, it's a bit of a struggle to do it with one finger, but yeah, that should work. We'll do two of that. All right, so we got our flange, we got loose vise, got our mixer box where our pipes are going to go on, We have our puffer cap. It has holes perforated all the way around inside that inside sleeve. These bolts, I think I'm going to leave them removable just because this is a very tight area going over the top of the valve cover, underneath the cowling, right next to the brake master cylinder. The V10 doesn't have a whole lot of room, so if I weld these bolts into the back side of the plate, I might not be able to get this plate on. So I'm going to leave these removable, I think. So, got our 3/8 nut welded down, got them top and bottom, got our homemade spring, washer, and a nylock. Nylock is just barely attached, and if we have a puff back event, it'll slide back. You can see all the perforations as soon as the puff is done, and it'll close itself back up. It's got a very little pressure right there at the beginning, but right out here at the top, I think it's probably comparable to on my Toyota truck, the amount of tension I have on my hopper lid, and that has 9 screen door springs holding that one on. So pretty good amount of pressure. Now I'll just have to figure out how to make this seal up right around here, and then put our tubes on, and one over here, weld up that little hole. This will be ready for sandblast and paint, go onto the truck.